How are we doing today? That wasn't very much of a response. Doing good? Okay. My name is Katelyn. I'm 17 years old, and I go to Lubbock Cooper High School. If you know me, you know that I like things that are like, I would say childish, but I like things like the movie Cars and coloring books, and that just really brings me joy. And so whenever I was thinking about what I wanted to teach on, I just felt like I should teach on like one of the classics that we all know. And Jonah and the whale just kept coming to my mind. And so today I'm going to talk about Jonah and the whale because I heard this story several times as a kid, like I'm sure most of you have. And I wanted to look back on it and see like what I could get from it now that I'm older. And I think that as like teenagers in middle school and high school, we tend to be like, oh, we tend to really overcomplicate things and be like, oh, well, this has to be some really deep theological thing. But I think that if we take a step back and if we look at things that maybe we think we've known for years, we can really get some new things out of it and a new perspective whenever we're this age now. So let's just jump right in. So in the story, God asks Jonah, who was a prophet at the time, to go to this city called Nineveh. And Jonah did not like Nineveh, and the people there were mean, and he was pretty afraid to go there. But God told him to go there and to give a message to them. And Jonah said, I don't think so. That's scary, and I'm going to go get on a boat. And I'm going to go as far away as possible. So Jonah got on a boat to go to Tarshish. And actually, I found this little fun fact in my Bible. Tarshish was like the edge of the known earth at the time. So like he tried to go as far away as possible. So if you get your Bible out and go to chapter 1, verse 8. Wow. Jonah 1, verse 1, sorry, not 8. Okay. So it says, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise and go to Nineveh, the great city. Call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish and the presence of the Lord. So not only was he like trying to get away from his problems, he was like, I'm going to run from God too, because surely he can't find me. And so that was not good. So if we keep reading in verse 4, But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. So God sent a big storm because Jonah was not supposed to be on this boat. And the people that were on the boat with him start being like, well, like, what's going on? Like, we don't know why there's this huge storm. And they start voting on people to like be like, where is this coming from? And so Jonah actually gets on the boat and he goes to sleep. So I think that can be like applied to our life in kind of how, or at least if I ever have like an overwhelming amount of problems, I will go home and I will just go to bed. I'll take a nap, because sometimes it's just too hard. And so Jonah, he went and he got on the boat and he went to sleep. And but God knew that Jonah was on this boat. He could still see him, and he never left his side. And so God sends a storm, and he's like, hey, Jonah, like, wake up. You got to deal with this issue that I sent you to deal with. And so Jonah's asleep. So whenever we are like trying to get away from our problems, even though we're sleeping, God is like, he's never left our side, and he's always with us. So now reading in verse 9. And then he said to them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. And the men, exceedingly afraid, and said to them, what is this that you have done? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. So the men are like, well, there's this new guy that we don't know, that's not part of our crew on this boat. And so Jonah tells them that he is a man of the Lord, and they're like, well, what are you about? And so he tells them that he is running from the Lord, and they knew that the Lord was powerful because of this storm that he had sent. So they were like, well, why are you causing this inconvenience for us? And then in verse 11, then they said to him, what shall we do to you, that the sea may quiet down for us? The sea grew more and more tempest, and he said to them, pick me up and hurl me into the sea, then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. So sometimes when we're going through a storm in life, it's not always because of something that we did, but because of someone who's on our boat. So when we're walking through life, maybe you didn't cause this problem with something's going on at school, but maybe you didn't cause the problem, but you start to feel yourself drifting away from God in this boat. And so they figured out, they were like, Jonah's the problem, we have to throw him overboard. So sometimes we need to take a step back from our life and evaluate, maybe the people in our life are leading us away from God. And so it's really important to have godly people in your life to lead you towards the Lord and not away from him. Let's see. So Jonah gets thrown overboard, and they're like, okay, good, problem solved. But now what's happening to Jonah? So as you probably know, Jonah gets swallowed by a big fish, not a whale, big fish. And he is in the fish's belly for 3 days, 3 nights. And in the fish's belly, he cries out to the Lord, and he's like, I've turned away from you, I'm sorry, and I need you in my life, and I realize that I can't do this alone. So Jonah, in chapter 2, verse 7, says, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. And so when Jonah was at his weakest and lowest moment, he cried out to God, and God still responded to him, even though he had tried to go as far away as possible, because God is always there. And even if you try to go to the ends of the earth, God will still be there with you. So he cried out to God, and then God said, okay, I'm going to give you a second chance. He had grace for him, and the fish spit Jonah out onto the land. Then, in chapter 3, then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, saying, arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it in the message that I tell you. So he tells him again, go to Nineveh and tell the city about my great plans for them. And Jonah still really doesn't want to do this, but he trusts the Lord this time, and he goes to Nineveh. And then in verse 4, Jonah delivers the message, and God is gracious towards the city. And it says that the city tore their clothes and dressed in sackcloth, and then they rubbed ashes on their forehead, which was a sign of grief and mourning at the time. And so the city realizes that what they've done is wrong and that they've turned away from the Lord and that their city is now corrupt. And they feel horrible about it after what Jonah has said to them. And then the Lord is like, okay, I'm not going to put my wrath upon you. So Jonah actually had a really big impact on this city once he actually got there. And I think that sometimes whenever we are asked to do something by the Lord, we see it as very scary, and we tend to run away. And maybe running away doesn't look like getting on a boat. But maybe it looks like you go home and you get on your phone and you go on TikTok. And then suddenly it's like 12 a.m. and you've been on TikTok for 4 hours. And and then you're too tired and you go to bed and you never make time for the Lord, and you slowly start drifting away from the Lord. And so once you realize that you're drifting away from him, you can always call out to him, and because he never left, and he will always be gracious to you. There is never like a right, or I guess never a wrong time to go back to the Lord if you realize you have drifted away. And even though Jonah made an impact on a whole city, maybe you're not being called to a whole city. Maybe you don't need to go to the whole city of Lubbock, and if you do, that's great too. But maybe you have a neighbor that you've really been feeling like you need to talk to, just to have a conversation with them. Or maybe there's that group of kids at your school that you really don't like and they're kind of intimidating. You're scared of them, but you feel like the Lord is asking you to talk to them. So you go and you talk to them, because even though it might be scary, like God was with Jonah the whole time he was telling that city that the Lord was for them. So whenever you feel these callings, don't run away from the Lord, because he's always there with you, and even though it's scary, the people that you have with you in your boat will hopefully build you up and lead you the right way. Okay, so one of the questions that I'm going to ask is, what are you running from? So maybe you're not running from a whole city, like I said, but there are things that we run from, and I wanted to share a little thing of something that I have run from before, so that I'm not just telling you with no example. So in middle school, I'm sure you know that we go on this mission trip as a youth group called Veritable. And in, I think it was 7th grade, I felt like the Lord was telling me to go. And I had only been in this youth group for like 2 years. And so my parents were like, hey, do you want to go on this mission trip? And I was like, that's a little scary. I don't know. And then the sign-up date kept getting closer and closer, and I kept being like, ooh, I don't know. And then suddenly I made this excuse. I don't even remember what it was, but I made some excuse on why I couldn't go, because I was scared. I didn't want to go to some place I had never been and do something with people that I didn't know that well. And so I didn't go on that mission trip, and I ended up regretting it because people came back from it, and I was like, oh, dang, could have been really good. So then a couple years pass, and I get to freshman year, and my friends are encouraging me to sign up for another mission trip called Waterfront. And I was like, ooh, that's actually really scary because I've never been on a plane before, and it's like halfway across the country, and ooh, I don't know. But they were like, you should sign up. And it was just an application, so I was like, okay. So I turn in my application, and I get on the team. And I was really scared. I didn't know anyone that well. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. And then COVID happened. And I got told that I wouldn't be able to go to Washington, D.C. that year. And I was like, oh, yes, like, thank gosh, I don't have to do that anymore. And so I was like, oh, I'm sad, but also that was going to be really scary, and I don't want to do it. So the application came around again, my junior year, and I submitted it again, and I got on the team, and we actually went this time, and it was the best time of my life. And we got to reach so many people's lives, and I got to experience things with the Lord that I never would have gotten to experience if I ran away from that experience. So even though it took me like 4 or 5 years to get there, once I finally was there, I still at the beginning was like, ooh, this is scary. But with the right people next to me, it was a very positive experience for me, and I was so glad that I didn't not sign up. So yeah, that's my little what I was running away from, and it was very scary. But maybe yours is whatever to you. I'm sure you might be thinking of something right now, and if you're not, you can support those around you with what they're maybe being asked to go and do, and just support them in that. And then also, back to your boat. So in supporting the people around you, Jonah was on his boat, and they were like, what the heck, dude, why are you here? You're causing a problem. So maybe your life is like going good, and then you hit some rocky waters, and you're like, I didn't do anything. I don't know why this is going hard for me. And then you realize that maybe you're starting to hang out with the people that do things that you know are not okay. And you are starting to drift away from the Lord, and they ask you to go to that party that you know you shouldn't go to, and you say, yeah, let's go. And then you go to the party, and it doesn't go well. It's fun in the moment, but you know you shouldn't have gone afterwards. And then that same group of friends keeps asking you to go every weekend, and you start falling behind and drifting further and further away from the Lord, and suddenly you don't even know where to begin again with your relationship with the Lord, because these people have let you drift so far away. So whenever you're thinking about who's in your boat, there are certain people that will lead you towards the Lord and lead you away from the Lord. And so whenever those friends ask you to go to the party again, maybe you decide to stop hanging out with them. And you cut off those relationships, and though it may be hard, you know that their influence on your life is not something that you need in this stage in your life. So, basically, Jonah was asked to go to a great city, and he was scared. And he ran very far away from the Lord, even though he was still there. And then he gets swallowed by a fish, and he prays to God, and God gives him a second chance. And he goes to Nineveh, and he does great things there. And so what we can do is we can listen for the Lord and draw near to him, and focus on that voice. And either you are already being called to something, or you will be called to something, and go into that with knowing that God will always be by your side, and that even though it may be scary, you will never be alone. And I don't know how to Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pray. Okay. Dear God, I thank you for bringing all of us here today to hear your word. And I pray that every one of these students knows that they are never alone, even whenever they think that they are very, very far away from you. And I pray that each student gets something out of this lesson, even though it is a classic. And I hope that we can go into this week with being refreshed and with a new mindset of how we can love on those in our school, even if it's scary. I thank you for this time that you have given me, and I hope that everyone has a great week. Amen.